Finally, after nearly 2 decades of proposals, renovations, a potential move to Canada, and some of the lowest attendance in modern Major League history, the Tampa Bay Rays have finally announced their plan to replace the much-hated Tropicana Field and build a new, state-of-the-art enclosed venue. Complaints over design, game experience, and location have dominated the conversation around Rays baseball since their inception, and despite making 2 World Series appearances in that time, the team still suffered some of the lowest attendance of any team that caliber in the history of baseball, with the Athletics the only team to sell fewer tickets on a consistent basis. In this video, we'll break down the Rays' full stadium proposal and cover everything that's happened to this point, but before that, we'll take a look at the history of this notoriously bad venue to get not only the full context of why the Trop is so terrible, but also why it's taken so long for the Rays to get a new stadium off the ground. This is everything we know so far about the Tampa Bay Rays' new stadium. This video is sponsored by Factor. Too busy this fall to cook but want to make sure you're eating well? With Factor, skip the extra trip to the grocery store and the chopping, prepping, and cleaning up too, while still getting the flavor and nutritional quality you need. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes, so all you have to do is heat and enjoy, then get back to crushing your goals. And if one of those goals is being calorie conscious, be sure to try Factor's delicious, dietitian-approved, calorie-smart meals with around or less than 550 calories per serving. I was on the road this week to a place where there really wasn't any restaurants, and I had no time to prep any meals to bring with me. Thanks to Factor's fresh, never frozen meals, I was able to have a week's worth of food shipped right to my hotel that I could easily cook and enjoy from the comforts of my room, with next to no cooking utensils required. Head to Factor75.com or click the link below to use code LBTV50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. Again, head to Factor75.com or click the link below to use code LBTV50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. Only at Factor75.com. So before we dive into the most recent developments around the Tampa Bay Rays' new stadium plans, let's discuss some of the history of Tropicana Field. As part of the AFL-NFL merger in 1970, both football leagues agreed to expand to new markets for not just business growth, but to also prevent rival leagues from arising. For the 1976 season, each league added a team. Seattle, a city franchise owners had threatened to move to for decades, finally got their first professional sports team in the Seahawks, with Tampa Bay recently coming off a population boom, doing the same with the Buccaneers. St. Petersburg, a city west of Tampa but considered part of the metro population, saw what their big brother was doing and wanted their own piece of the action, setting their sights on what at the time was still America's favorite pastime, Major League Baseball. As what many other cities thought during this era, local officials believed that in order to win an expansion team, they had to build a stadium first, and more than that, given Tampa's hot, humid, and stormy climate during the summer, it was deemed all but necessary to have an enclosed stadium. Talks of building a baseball-only venue in St. Petersburg began in the early 1980s, with the city council approving a site in the gas plant neighborhood 1 mile inland from Tampa Bay as the site of the new stadium. 2 years later, the local sports authority tasked with the project approved the sale of $85 million in public bonds to fund construction, and on November 22nd, 1986, 9,000 spectators showed up to witness the groundbreaking of the city's first professional sports venue. The neighborhood in which the stadium would effectively replace, the gas district, was named for 2 large gas storage tanks that once stood there, in addition to a coal gasification plant among many black-owned businesses. The selection of the site has proven to be pretty controversial in and of itself, but would require a longer video to fully cover. It seemed that the city's build and they will come philosophy was already working, as in the late 1980s, Chicago White Sox owner Jerry Reinsdorf grew anxious and frustrated over the aging Comiskey Park in Chicago, to which St. Petersburg pounced on, making a very convincing offer for him to move the franchise to Tampa Bay. However, the Illinois state legislature passed a funding bill for a new stadium across from the old Comiskey Park at the 11th hour in June of 1988, and St. Petersburg still found themselves in search of a team for their new venue. On March 3, 1990, the Florida Suncoast Dome, as it was named, officially opened with no one to fill it. Rock concerts and the Davis Cup tennis tournament came and went throughout the fall, and while no official tenant was secured its opening year, Tampa, much like Seattle in the early 1960s and early 70s, began being used as a negotiating pawn by franchise owners in other cities to get more from their local municipalities, with the Seattle Mariners and San Francisco Giants both reaching various stages of potentially relocating, the Giants' sale and move to Tampa being blocked by the MLB. The Dome was a finalist for National League expansion in 1993, but Tampa was competing with Orlando and Miami to secure the state's first baseball team, and ultimately the expansion committee believed that if any city in Florida should have a team, it should be Miami, and their new team, the Florida Marlins, branded themselves as such. In the meantime, the Tampa Bay Storm, an arena football team, moved into the venue, and shortly afterward, a group pushing to bring professional hockey to Tampa successfully secured the expansion franchise Tampa Bay Lightning, who played their first 3 seasons at the renamed Thunderdome until their hockey-specific venue was completed. After the Rockies and the Marlins' success post their creation, the American League and the National League both decided to add 1 team each for the 1998 season, and after deliberations, the expansion committee announced that Phoenix and Tampa Bay would each be awarded a franchise in the Diamondbacks and the Devil Rays, with the Thunderdome finally securing its intended tenant almost a decade and a half after the stadium was announced. The timing worked out quite well though, as the Lightning moved into the recently completed Ice Palace in 1996, allowing stadium officials to conduct renovations to make the Thunderdome a state-of-the-art venue for baseball. When the stadium opened in 1990, its capacity was over 45,000 fans, way overkill for hockey, and cost $130 million to complete. Now, 8 years later, officials were spending $70 million to complete renovations for a stadium that really hadn't been used. Before it hosted a baseball game, it was announced that locally based Tropicana Products had purchased naming rights in a 30-year agreement starting in 1996, conservatively estimated to have been worth around $30 million, with locals quickly adopting the nickname the Trop when referring to the venue post-naming rights deal. When the Tampa Bay Devil Rays played their first game at Tropicana Field on March 31, 1998, the Trop was the only baseball-specific enclosed stadium in the country, and given there was no need to go back and forth between sports, the green portions of the playing surface consisted of AstroTurf, but in lieu of the dirt sliding pits in traditional indoor baseball stadiums, dirt was used to cover the entire infield, a first for such a venue. The most notable exterior feature of the structure was its roof, which was intentionally slanted to decrease material and cooling costs, but it was also for it to better survive hurricanes. The roof itself is supported by a tensegrity structure that relies on tension similar to the Georgia Dome, rather than supported by air like the RCA and Metro Domes. The Devil Rays lost their first game in the Trop 11-6 to the Detroit Tigers, whose Luis Gonzalez hit the first home run in the stadium, with the Devil Rays' Wade Boggs following suit later in the game. The Devil Rays would retain said name until 2007, when Devil was dropped, and the team became known as simply just the Tampa Bay Rays, this resulting after years of fan complaints and Wall Street alum Stuart Sternburg taking a controlling ownership stake in the team. On a separate note, when Pepsi bought Tropicana in 1998, the company opted not to change the name of the stadium due to the local pride and popularity of the Tropicana brand. The Rays wouldn't have much success in their first decade of existence, finishing with a losing record each of their first 10 seasons. Then, out of nowhere, they won 60% of their games in 2008, beating the defending champ Boston Red Sox in the playoffs on their way to their first ever World Series appearance, bringing the first championship games to the Trop before losing to the Phillies in 5 games. The Rays would have 4 more playoff appearances in the next decade before spontaneously returning to the World Series again in a shortened COVID season in 2020, losing in 6 games to the LA Dodgers. Despite championship caliber play, but acknowledging the COVID years, attendance at the Trop has declined. Attendance peaked in 2009, averaging 23,000 fans per game. Starting in 2008, even before the team's postseason run, stadium officials began laying tarps over the upper decks of consistently empty seating, cutting capacity by a third. Average attendance in 2019 was only 14,500 fans before climbing to 17,700 so far in 2023, well under the original capacity of 45,000 fans. While following MLB trends, the swings have been much more dramatic for the Rays, as the team has had half the average per-game attendance when compared to the rest of the league. While the Rays' performance has largely been subpar, many fans attribute the low quality of the Trop as the source of decline. Since inception, fans have consistently ranked Tropicana Field at the bottom of stadiums around the league for several reasons. First, interior amenities and aesthetics. This is the most significant complaint by far, especially early on before further modifications were made. Fans complain that the stale, basement-like environment feels like the inside of a windowless warehouse, visibly unappealing and echoing. When considering what part of the world the stadium is located, its interior becomes almost unthinkable. I would also group age into this category, as the Trop is becoming one of the oldest stadiums in Major League Baseball without a venue-altering renovation, and it largely retains its late 1980s, early 1990s styling that is now becoming 35 years old. The second most common complaint is its location. Being in St. Petersburg, close to the tip of a peninsula across from downtown Tampa and far away from the bulk of the metro population, the stadium is very difficult to get to and is a long commute for the majority of fans. The last concern I'll call out for now is the catwalk system around the roof structure. Due to the slanted roof, the catwalks are lower in the outfield than over the stands, meaning that batters consistently hit balls up there, and the rules regarding the catwalks has been constantly evolving. As far as I understand, the top 2 catwalks, all 4 of which are named alphabetically from top to bottom, are fair game. In other words, if a ball hits the A or B catwalk and falls back down, it can be caught for an out. While if you hit C or D catwalks, it's considered a home run, except in foul territory. Over the course of the Trop's life, there has been several pivotal moments in games where balls have gotten stuck and remained stuck or rolled around the catwalk before coming back down, allowing for extra runs, each incident totally being at the discretion of umpires. After Stuart Sternburg took over in the mid-2000s, he immediately acknowledged the shortfalls of Tropicana Field and admitted the stadium was holding back the team financially, and every other year began proposing new stadium plans or modifications. His first proposal came in 2007 when the team suggested building a covered stadium in downtown St. Petersburg, replacing Aolang Field. However, vocal opposition from residents in the area prevented a public financing measure from ever reaching the ballot. Given the lack of support from the local community in St. Pete, Sternburg began looking to other sites in the Tampa Bay area for a new stadium. When this was discovered, the mayor of St. Petersburg went on the offensive, broadcasting out to the community that the Rays' lease at the Trop, which ends in 2027, contractually prohibited them from negotiating with any other municipality regarding stadium matters. This resulted in a prolonged stalemate where everyone hated the Trop and where it was located, but the city wasn't going to help pay for a new stadium or let the team move. Forced to look inside, more than $35 million was spent between 2006 and 2007. Upgrades included new field turf, premium clubs, and a 65-foot-long video board, in addition to HD broadcasting infrastructure. The most notable feature to come out of this phase of renovation was the cow-nose Ray tank. When I first read about this, I thought of an aquarium-style tank in a hallway that decked up like something you find at a zoo. But no, it is a legit pool, parked in a random corner of the stadium where several of the aquatic animal Ray chill and hang out during Rays games. Purely by coincidence, the first player to hit a home run in the Trop, Luis Gonzalez of the Detroit Tigers, was also the first player to hit a home run that landed in the Ray tank, this time as a member of the LA Dodgers. In 2014, Sternburg, frustrated with local officials, began discussions about relocating the team to Montreal, Canada, who had lost the Expos to Washington, D.C. 10 years prior. These discussions would later morph into half moving the team, which we'll discuss more in a second. After threatening to sell the team if a new stadium wasn't built, Sternburg once again attempted to propose a new stadium, saying in 2018 that Ybor City, northeast of Tampa, was his desired location after reaching an agreement with the city of St. Petersburg, who gave the team 3 years to study locations outside city limits before reinstating the negotiation ban. Formal proposals, including a $900 million cost estimate and an exact site location, were unveiled, Sternburg revealing his desire to have the project mostly taxpayer-funded. However, despite fanfare, conversations about funding proposals and other important details with local officials never materialized, and this announcement ended up going no further than that. In 2019, Major League Baseball gave the Rays permission to explore playing the first half of the season in Tampa and the second half in Montreal, an arrangement not seen before in professional sports. Sternburg went as far as saying that he would hang a banner in the Trop promoting this arrangement, which received tremendous blowback, resulting in Sternburg canceling the plan and issuing an apology to fans. Once the COVID-19 pandemic went its course, MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred stated that the Rays' search for a new stadium needed to proceed, opening up the team to search beyond just the Tampa Bay area, saying separately that the aging Tropicana Field and Coliseum in Oakland were holding back the league from expanding. Meanwhile, at the Trop, stadium staff had begun tarping off nearly half of the stadium's seats and completely closing and permanently covering up upper decks, leaving only 25,000 seats available for games. As attendance declined and the subtropical golf-themed Rays gaffed about playing in Arctic Canada, St. Petersburg went on the offensive and requesting proposals to not only keep the Rays at the 86-acre Trop site, but to also create a multi-use district to restore the majority-minority gas neighborhood that the city had been sharply criticized for erasing, the mayor emphasizing the need to take action as soon as possible. Development firms that responded were split. Some of the proposals unveiled at the beginning of 2021 included a baseball stadium, while others did not. Most recommended replacing parking lots and the decrepitated Trop with ultra-modern residential and commercial spaces, among parks and water features to act as part of a revitalization of the neighborhood and St. Pete's downtown. Costs ranged from $2 to $3 billion and had completion dates from the mid-2020s to the next decade or so out. Unfortunately for everyone, these proposals didn't get any traction. However, that was largely because the Rays were already utilizing their own development consulting team in Houston-based Heinz Co. and putting together their own redevelopment plan. In December 2022, the Rays unveiled their proposal to reimagine the Tropicana Field site, a mixed-use district with a new 30,000-seat enclosed stadium. Revealing very little specifics, Sternburg emphasized the new stadium, calling the square-shaped venue a pavilion that would feature a fixed roof with no catwalks. He also stated that the roofline of the stadium will sit more in line with neighboring structures, leading many to assume that there wouldn't be any upper deck seating. The most notable feature would be sliding glass windows, which Sternburg didn't fully elaborate on what exactly they would look like or how they would function and how many of them there would be. The roof would be a mix of hard decking and plastic ETFE panels that had become very popular among stadiums built during this time for their lightweight use and ability to let in natural light. The only logistical detail released was that the plan was to have a new stadium ready for play in 2028. Now, the race was on to finalize details of the stadium, including interior design and a site plan for the mixed-use district. But most importantly, the team was going to have to make a deal with the city on public funding for not just the estimated $1.3 billion stadium, but funding for the rest of the district and all the necessary infrastructure improvements. Early bets on getting a deal done at this point were very optimistic, as St. Petersburg's mayor was just happy to keep the team within city limits. That was the biggest criticism of the deal, remaining in St. Petersburg. Given that the location was arguably the second most common complaint about Tropicana Field, and that the Rays' attendance ranked at the bottom of the major league throughout their existence, many were shocked to hear that the team had thrown in the towel on finding a better location. Team president Brian Auld stated later that given the building boom of residential housing in St. Pete since the team first began proposing a new stadium, the fact that they plan to include several thousand in the redevelopment project, and projections by Heinz about how many more will be completed by the time the stadium is open, he felt that despite being in the same location, they would be operating in a completely new city than when the Trop first opened, a 30% increase in attendance in 2023 later supporting his claim. Throughout the spring and early summer, public conversation about the project remained dormant, while final details specifically about a funding plan were deliberated. Then, on September 19, 2023, the Tampa Bay Rays, the city of St. Petersburg, and Pinellas County held an official ceremony at Tropicana Field to announce that all three parties had come to an agreement on a mixed-use district and a new $1.3 billion stadium, based off the rendering that had been released 1 year prior. Sternburg said the historic gas plant district project will be heavily influenced by the battery development surrounding the Braves Stadium in Atlanta. Both the stadium and mixed-use district are estimated to cost a combined $6.5 billion and take 20 years to complete in total. Only financing for the stadium was announced as St. Petersburg committed $600 million for its construction and another $130 million in infrastructure spending for the site, while the Rays will pay $700 million and cover any cost overruns. a figure they confessed they don't have the resources to cover, and stated that they would likely be selling equity stakes in the team to pay for their portion. St. Petersburg Mayor Ken Welch and owner Stuart Sternburg, among others, spoke at the ceremony and confirmed that the deal is a handshake agreement right now, and both the City Council and County Commission still need to vote on a much more complicated final plan for the district that hasn't been finalized yet. Officials from the county stating that the vote will likely take place in early 2024, with all suggesting that groundbreaking will take place by the end of that year. Without saying it explicitly, the team will likely continue to play at the Trop through the 2027 season, at which point the new stadium will be completed. Shortly afterward, the Trop will be demolished and construction on the gas plant district will begin, Heinz Co. stating that they plan to have 20% of the mixed-use development completed by opening day of 2028, which will be mostly retail projects that support the stadium, like restaurants and shops. Many of the stadium announcements from the last several years have included a mixed-use district, and while exciting, most of these stadiums have sat completed and currently sit waiting for construction on the mixed-use district to begin. I don't know if that's something to be concerned about in this case given the site is located in St. Pete's downtown, but playing devil's advocate is always something to consider when we're talking about projects of this magnitude. Current plans for the district call for 4,800 market-rate residential units, 600 affordable housing units, and 600 senior units, 1.4 million square feet of office and medical space, and 750,000 square feet of retail space, in addition to 750 hotel rooms, a 3,000 to 4,000 capacity concert venue, and a new home for the Woodson African American Museum of Florida. And of course, everyone's must-know stat, there are only 14,000 parking spaces planned for the entire district. And on top of that, 600 residential units will also be constructed off-site as part of a $50 million community project associated with the main development. I'm not sure how the MLB processes new stadiums, but I'm sure the owners will have to vote and will easily approve the new stadium. But my bigger question is about if a community benefit agreement is necessary, like for NFL stadiums. I'm sure there's something to that effect, but smaller. Many have suggested now that the Tampa Bay Rays and Oakland Athletics finally have their stadium situations somewhat figured out, the 30-team MLB can finally turn their sights to expansion as many municipalities have already begun projects to lure new franchises. Definitely a storyline we'll be following going forward. In terms of does the announced stadium plans really solve the Rays' problems? I don't know. I do think that a new stadium will be a huge difference maker as long as they do it right, but I'm not totally sold on the team's explanation of why they decided to stay at the Tropicana site. What I really think happened is that over the last decade or so, the team has tried again and again to get a stadium built on the other side of the bay and have St. Petersburg's big brother Tampa pay for it, only to be shown the door as public funding for stadiums has gotten unpopular. I think the only reason the Rays are staying in St. Petersburg is because the city was willing to help pay for a new stadium that the Rays clearly can't afford to pay for half of. And while that sounds bad, I think the situation is actually one of the better examples of public-private partnerships in recent memory. The Rays bring in people from all over the region who otherwise wouldn't visit St. Petersburg's downtown or move there, boosting the local economy and exposure, and in exchange, the city will help pay for a new stadium. Whether the location continues to be a problem or not for attendance remains to be seen. Regardless of where it's located, I do think moving forward with a new dome stadium is also a good thing, as it will be the only enclosed venue of its size in Tampa Bay, making it the go-to location for concerts and traveling shows that need the climate certainty a roof provides. It's kinda crazy that after all these years of thinking about life post-Tropicana Field and all the attempts to get a new stadium, that the solution is comparatively simple. Hopefully the rest of the process justifies that claim and a new venue will open by 2028. For now, we're just going to have to wait for early next year when the city and county vote on the plan, securing the Trop's fate. And we here at LaBreeceTV will be watching closely.